A Flourish writer believes in the power of her story, the gospel made alive as a declaration to this generation. She cultivates the courage to dream, write, and publish the story inside her. Welcome to Flourish Writers. Hi there, Flourish Writers. Welcome to another fabulous conversation. I'm Mindy Kiker, and here today with my dear friend, Asheritah Ciuciu. Welcome, Asheritah.
Hi, Mindy. So good to be with you and all the Flourish Writers. Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you are all bundled up. Where are you today? You look cozy and beautiful.
Yes, I am in Northeast Ohio, and we just had this big snowstorm blow through. So we've had about 10 inches of snow, and it was 8 degrees yesterday. So it's a bit warmer today, but this is scarf weather, so I'm embracing it.
And that's 8 degrees Fahrenheit, not Celsius.
Yes.
We're talking down there below 0 Celsius.
Probably close to like negative 11 or 12, I think.
Woo, ouch.
Yeah.
And tell us about your family. You have some gorgeous little babies at home.
Aw, thank you. I think so too. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, Flaviu, and we both grew up in Romania. And we have 3 children. Carissa is 5, Amelia is 2.5, and Theo is 7 months.
I was praying that you got a good sleep last night.
I did actually, yes. Thank you for praying because it worked.
I remembered if I could at least get 5 hours, I felt functional.
Yeah, functional. I prefer a little bit longer to actually be a happy mama, not a grumpy mama. So yeah.
Good. And one of the reasons we asked you to be here with us is because you have a thriving online ministry. You have self-published and you've been traditionally published. So I'm curious how you got started as an author.
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer. I feel like it is a dream that God placed in my heart, and I think it's also the spiritual gifting that He gave me. And early on in my life, a lot of people affirmed that. So I just kind of made decisions that would lead me down that path. I took a creative writing class in high school. I majored in English in college. And after I graduated from college, there were a few things that happened personally in my family life that made me just put that dream aside and say it can't happen right now. Like, we're too broken as a family for God to be able to use us in that way. And I kind of felt like the dream died, but it was also a laying of it on the altar, if that makes sense, Mindy. And it was 2013, in the spring of 2013, that the Lord just started bringing people in my life saying, hey, have you thought of writing? Hey, I haven't read anything by you in a long time. Someone mentioned Revive Our Hearts. You could write for their blog. And I'm like, yeah, right. Like, no one knows who I am. This isn't going to happen. But I just felt that stirring from the Spirit that it's time. And specifically, He led me to the passage where Jesus says, a master had given talents to his servants. And there was the one servant who took his talent and buried it in the ground because he was afraid of the master's wrath. And I just felt the Lord saying, you are bearing the talent that I've given you. It's time to take it out and invest it because I want you to bring a return for the kingdom. So I was pregnant with Carissa at that time, and I remember thinking, well, I'm going to have maternity leave coming up here in the fall. What a great time to launch a blog, because I'm going to have all this time on my hands with nothing to do. And I think the Lord chuckled a little bit, but He is so gracious to use us and to move through us. And so my blog, onethingalone.com, launched in the fall of 2013. And it was a very strategic move because I'm a researcher at heart. I'm a 5 on the Enneagram, if you're into that. And so I love to learn how things work. And I had read earlier that summer that in order to be published as a writer, publishers are looking for this thing called a platform. So I spent a lot of time kind of looking at what that is, what does it take to build one, and I learned that a blog is one of the best ways in that time to do it. And so the blog launch was a strategic move toward publishing.
Well, it seems to have worked. Your 5 research-based intuition has paid off.
Yeah, so we launched the blog, and I say we because my husband is very involved right now, but when I launched it, it was just me. And I launched that blog, and the next year I participated in the Write 31 Days, which some of our viewers might be familiar with. It's a challenge every October to write 31 days straight. And I did that, and then the following year I did that again. And I thought, well, why should I stop now, right? I had written for 31 days. I'm like, I kind of have this rhythm now of writing every day, even just a little bit. I've always wanted to write a book, and might as well do that in November. So one thing kind of led to another. It really is the Lord's direction, I think, that he led me to study the names of Jesus, and to write an Advent devotional based on his names. So for every day of Advent, there's a different name of Jesus. And I wrote that, Mindy, in about 2.5 weeks, mostly at night. Chris at this point was one and a little bit, and she was sleeping okay. And so I would stay up after everyone had gone to bed around 11. I would stay up until the next day, like 3 or 4 a.m. Because mamas don't get a lot of sleep anyway. So at this point I was like, I can function on just a few hours, and just kind of knocked out that manuscript. I had a friend proofread it for me. She's a professional editor, and she was so gracious to do that. And my husband designed the cover. And I want to show you, this is Unwrapping the Names of Jesus. This is actually, we did this the second year. The first year I took it to Staples and I had it spiral bound. So they printed out pages and it was spiral bound. I think I have one of those somewhere. And then the next year we did like a cover, and we went through Create Space, and I think he did such a great job with it. Just with like the interior, it looks really cool. Yeah, so I was very excited about this. I was like, this is my first like self-published, but still it's my book. And the children's ministry director at our church was so gracious to say, you know, I think our families need this. Could I buy 50 copies? And I was like, 50 copies? Like, yeah, of course. This is fantastic. And I just want to pause and say, Mindy, like God's favor was resting on my writing, and there's no other way to explain it except that he was the one opening doors and paving the way. And that's not to say that we shouldn't persist if things get hard, but I think our spirit has to be in tune with his spirit. Yes. There are times when I have persisted in things that were of my own will and my own desire and not his. But you'll know, like, if you are walking in his way, and if he has called you to be a writer, and you are being obedient to that call, you will see that he's giving you favor. And he is, I was praying for the Spirit to be that whisper in my ear that says, this is the way, walk in it. And he was so faithful to do that.
Yes, I love the, we prepare the horse for battle, but victory is the Lord's.
Yes.
So we do play our part, but heaven forbid that we would think that we are creating the outcome ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So to kind of pick up that storyline, this was November, and then it launched in December. And then in January, I was like, well, I'm on a roll. I might as well just kind of keep up the writing. And I went to the library this time during the day. My husband, again, saw the fruit of my writing, and so he created more space for me during the day to be able to get away and write. So in about 3 weeks at the library during the day, I wrote an e-course called Quiet Time for Busy Women. And that was kind of the main problem that my readers were wrestling with. And I laid out how do you become consistent in the habit of spending time with Jesus in 6 weeks. And I launched that as an e-course, as an email opt-in, and shared it with a few larger sites. And that was I would say one of my big breakthroughs early on. I had over 2,000 signups in 2 days. And that is just, it's unheard of. But it affirmed that this is a pain point for women.
Yeah.
And again, I saw God's hand of favor there saying, this is it, keep going this way. And a few months after that, because I was familiar with CreateSpace, we turned it into a workbook. So it was an e-course, and then you could also buy the workbook separately, which was also self-published. And this is one thing I recommend for writers, is to look for ways to repurpose content that you already have. Because some women wanted, they wanted it in their hands. So this gave them that ability for those who didn't want the e-course. So Quiet Time for Busy Women came out later that summer. And it was just a nice way to reuse some of the content that I had put into that e-course. And then a few months later, it was a period of spiritual revival in my life. And I'm not going to get into it because that's a whole nother book. But the Lord was doing something in my life. And that summer I said, okay, it's time to write this. And I was working on a manuscript. It was a series of devotions about going from being fixated on food and obsessed with what am I eating, what's my size, how much do I weigh, just all these thoughts that are running in the background of our minds. And how do we go from there to a place of freedom in Christ? What does the Bible say about food? So I wrote that manuscript, again, in a few weeks. Because of the way God wired me, I spent a lot of time researching and reading and studying and kind of thinking about it. And then when I'm ready to write, I can just sit and it comes out. So that's kind of the way that God made me to write. And so I did that. I created a series of devotions. I was ready to self-publish it again. And I was in a mastermind with a few other women. And one of them, who has become a very dear friend of mine, said, Asheritah, what about self-published? What about traditional publishing? You've self-published your other ones. It might be time to look at a traditional publisher. And I thought, why would I do that? I'm doing okay, doing my own thing. Why would I give up control of my manuscript? Why would I allow someone else to make these decisions about, cover design and marketing and all these other things? Because again, I had researched what it takes to market a book, and I thought I was doing pretty well. And I think in retrospect, I was for where I was at that time. So I was really hesitant about it, but the Lord kept bringing it up. Different people kept bringing it up in conversation, this is a great idea. I think you should talk to a publisher about it. So I talked to my husband, and he agreed that it's something we can pursue. Again, it was taking me outside of the home, because I knew from research, one of the best ways to connect with a publisher would be to go to a conference. And that would stretch us as a family. So it was important to me to have his support and his encouragement. And I went to this conference. I prepared a book proposal. I had researched how to do that. I thought it was really great. And I met with a few publishers. I met with a few agents as well. And one publisher, well, two, expressed interest in it. And one of them said, come see me, or, connect with me again when you have an agent. So I was like, okay, I guess things are getting serious.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you wanted to jump in with a question at that point.
I'm loving this.
I can keep telling my story.
I'm following the timeline. I'm right there with you. I'm hanging on what happened next?
So I left the conference. I had met with a few agents, and there was one in particular that I wanted to follow up with. And I was able to connect with her. And I'm just going to pause. I'm going to kind of take an aside from my book writing to more of, okay, finding an agent. Because again, from talking to other published writers and from researching online, I realized that some authors have a bad experience with their agent, and I didn't want that to be my experience. So I had read somewhere that it's a equal partnership, and it's important for the writer to interview the agents. And I think typically as writers, we feel like we're being interviewed, like we want them to believe in us. And I just want to encourage, whoever's watching this, if you have a message that God has given you, and if you believe that is something that he has called you to share with the world, and you are feeling directed to partner with an agent, that agent is your equal. It's like hiring a real estate agent, right? They are going to be doing work for you. So it's super important that that you connect at a heart level, that you can trust this person. Look at some of the other writers that they have partnered with and that they represent, and make sure that that is the type of writing that you want to do. And this would be, jump on a call or meet with them in person, have a longer conversation. One of the things I appreciated about my agent when we were going through this process is she stayed on the phone with me for like an hour and a half. And we talked about all the different things. And I could tell she was really resonating with it. And then at the end, I asked her for referrals, which is unusual, but it's something that I really recommend you do if you're pursuing an agent. Ask, are there a few of your clients that I can talk to, just to get a feel for what it's like to work with you as an agent. And you can do that kindly. But that, again, is a way to safeguard and to make sure that you're not jumping into an agent relationship with someone who might not be the best person to represent you. So Connie was kind enough to do that, and I talked to 3 of her clients, and they all had glowing reviews, and they loved working with her. And at that point, even after the conversation with her, even before I did the interviews with her other referrals, I knew like this is the one, but it's just good to double check. So Tani has been representing me for, I think, 3.5 years now. And I just love her. I cannot say enough good things about her. So love my agent.
And she kindly offered to chat with us as well as part of the FlourishWriters conference. So hopefully our viewers will get a chance they can put together Asheritah and Tani, the dynamic duo.
Yeah, go watch that interview. It's going to be so helpful for you. So I got an agent. We signed together, and I showed her my book proposal, of course, as part of our conversation. And she's like, this is good. We need to work on it. I was like, what? I spent like 3 months working on this book proposal. I worked another 3 months on it with Tani. She was so good about really honing in on the message of the book and fine-tuning. It was like a 15-page document with a marketing plan and everything laid out. And as part of it, I also did a video pitch to the publishers. So I hired a videographer. Not all agents require this, but the agency I'm with highly recommends it. It's a way to stand out in a very crowded space. So I did a video pitch to publishers explaining why I believe this book is needed in the market. And even before we had a chance to go to like negotiating with the different publishers, the one publisher that I had met with at the blogging conference emailed me out of the blue, right? These coincidences happen from the Lord's provision. And she emailed me and said, hey, I moved from that publisher to Moody Publishers, and I would love to bring your book with me. Do you have an agent yet? Can I see the proposal? I'm really interested in acquiring it. So again, I believe that God calls us to ask and seek and knock, and he goes before us and prepares the way. And so my acquiring editor for Moody Publishers was really willing to pursue me and the book. And it made it easy to say yes to partner with Moody at the time, and no one else. So I was praying in that process that God would make it crystal clear who I should partner with as far as a traditional publisher, and he did. So I'm very, very grateful for Moody and the way that we have been able to really be partners in bringing these books to the world. So we published Food, Jesus, and the Battle for Satisfaction, I think 2 years ago. And they just did such an incredible job with the cover, with the interior. I love working with a traditional publisher for these kind of books because it just takes it to a whole nother level. And their marketing is I mean, they have marketing power that a single individual has a much harder time being able to reach, into some of the big box stores, or even into some of the Christian bookstores. It's hard to do that. But Moody does what they do really well, and I love partnering with them. So this was the first book that came out, and a few months before this was published, so this is January, and it must have been like September, October the year before, my husband and I went to Moody to talk with them about the marketing plan and kind of where we see this going. And we were sitting around the table with other editors and just some other people in the publishing department. And someone casually mentioned, this was over lunch and we were just chatting, and someone casually mentioned, like, hey, do you have any other books that you've worked on? And I'm like, yeah, I have this Advent devotional, and I have this other one, Quiet Time for Busy Women. And I was really excited about this one. I was like, this would be really cool if they wanted to partner with me on this.
Yeah.
And the next day, like, it didn't go anywhere. We just kept talking, conversation moved on. And the next day, my acquiring editor emailed me and said, we are looking for an Advent devotional, and we want to buy yours. Would you be willing to give us the rights and partner with us to bring this to a larger audience? And of course, like, a little part of me just squealed, like, this is amazing. Yeah. And the bigger part of me, Mindy, like, this is so embarrassing to admit, the bigger part of me was like, I'm not sure I want to do that.
So let go.
Because, and here's where I'll put them side by side. Partnering with a traditional publisher, I love it. It's great in so many ways. It gives greater exposure. I have a publicist who sets up radio interviews, and I'm able to speak to a larger audience. But honestly, girl to girl here, the royalty isn't that great. It is a tiny fraction of what you make self-publishing. And so I was running some mental calculations. This had sold for us pretty well. We did the tally, and at that point it had been about 500 books in 2 years, which was good for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just made it. Publishing books is one of the primary ways that we support our ministry. And I didn't know if it would be a good choice to give up that much potential, because sales were exponentially growing each year.
Yeah.
So I talked with Tawny, and this is another good reason to have an agent, because there's someone who can help you kind of think through this. And at the end, she said, it's your decision. But I think partnering with Moody will bring this book to more people. And so if this is a message that is burning in your heart and you want more people to read it, then, you need to decide which of the factors is more important. And so it took us, honestly, a few weeks of really wrestling and praying and saying, is this something we hold on to? Is this something that we give over and say, yes, we're going to partner? And spoiler alert, God did amazing things with it. We did hand it over to Moody. And then this little book came out.
So pretty.
It is gorgeous. It is gold foil on the cover. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
And then even in the interior, they just did such a good job with designing the book. It's hardcover. And as soon as we said yes to partnering, I had that peace that this is the right decision. And do I make less per sale? Yes, I do. And I'm going to throw some numbers out, and this is not to brag, but just to give you perspective of what's possible. In the first 2 weeks that the book went on sale, we sold, I think, 6,000 copies. It had far exceeded, it exceeded what Moody had projected for the first year's sales. So I earned back my royalty like immediately, but also we ran out of books because they had only ordered a certain number and they wanted to be safe, right? Because they based their sales projections on my sales projections, which were not that good.
Yeah.
And so we sold out, and they did, of the first print run, they did an emergency second print run, and we sold out of that print run immediately. And they went ahead and ordered a third emergency print run. And it was just, it's uncommon. The whole story with this little book is uncommon, because it's uncommon for a publisher to pick up a self-published book.
Yes.
It's uncommon to sell through something that fast and to have to get another print run. And I will say Moody heard it so well and so graciously. It's a good problem to have, but in some ways it's still a problem, because the Advent season was so short that we had a little window to kind of get this book out. But it did get out there, and again, God was so gracious to bless it with his favor, to get it into the hands of more women and their families, and word of mouth really is what helped propel this book. So this past year in December, we doubled our sales from the previous year, and it hit number 3 on the ECPA Christmas bestsellers list. And again, I say that not to brag at all, because here's where I was. I wanted to hold on to this, right? I was thinking, this is it. This is my ticket. And yet God said, I want so much more for you.
Yeah.
And I think they're both good. I think it's important to have balance in how we view publishing. And so this is one story. The other story is with Full. And again, if you have a contract with a publisher, I encourage you to negotiate some of those terms, kind of think through it as a partnership, not that they're doing you a favor, but that you're serving together. So when Full came out, as we were negotiating details for the contract, I asked for rights. I wanted to retain more rights because I knew I was going to exploit them. And one of the rights was a companion journal. So we self-published this companion journal to go with this book. And it was a strategic move, because women kind of want something to journal through as they're reading. I'm giving you like all my trade secrets here. But
we're making notes, and thank you. It's for the kingdom.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I'm sharing it. But again, in the first year of book sales for Full, we sold many more of these than the companion journal, but I made almost as much in royalties journal as I did on this. And this is just an example to say you can do both, right? You don't need to choose just one or the other, or feel like you're locking yourself in. If you have a good publisher, if you have a good agent who's willing to coach you and kind of cheer you through this, you can merge the two together to have the best of both worlds, right? So the message is getting out, and this is also helping support my ministry. And it's just been a wonderful partnership in that way. So that's another story. And then another advantage of self-publishing, so like with Quiet Time for Busy Women, I had a reader who runs a publishing company in Romania. I mentioned in the beginning, I'm from Romania. And she said, can we translate this? I want to get this into the hands of women. And because it's self-published, I have the rights to that. And so it was a very easy process, a really quick process. And they came out with the Romanian edition in just a few weeks. And it's such a joy, again, to get these books into the hands of more women.
Yeah.
So I also have this one, which I wrote and published 2 weeks before my second was due, which I do not recommend. Don't schedule a launch right before your baby's due. But you'd think I'd learned. I didn't. I self-published this. And then this is my third book with Moody. It's a Bible study on Colossians. And this came out the week before my third was born. So I kind of feel like I need to stop having babies. No, I'm kidding. It has been such an incredible journey. And the Lord, again, has been gracious. He has blessed my writing ministry with his favor and his grace. And kind of to tell you like where the story is going, Moody and I are partnering together for my next 4 books, which again, it is unusual to have a multi-book deal that's 4 books. Sometimes you'll hear about a 2-book deal, rarely a 3-book deal. It is all God's grace and his favor that they've offered to partner for the next few years as we work together to write more books and help women find joy in Jesus. So I am so thrilled to partner with them. I love that they bring strengths to the table that I can't do on my own, and yet they're willing to kind of merge the two together and allow me to self-publish alongside traditional publishing. And it's been an incredible ride.
Oh, Asheritah, I'm so inspired. I know our listeners are just going to be pulling out their notepad saying, oh, yes, Lord, me too. And what I can really say to our viewers is that, Asheritah, your heart speaks, because you really are in ministry. And I think the blessing of the Lord's favor, really comes from that pressing in and that trusting in Him. And just as I've got to know you over the years, I've experienced your true and genuine heart. And what I absolutely love is when you're talking about the wrestling with just the financial side, and how are we going to support the ministry, and how is this going to work, this partnership with my agent, this partnership with the publisher. Because those are sometimes the questions that people in ministry or authors almost feel like maybe that is not the kind of question I should be asking. If I'm really concerned about the message, or I have this thing burning on my heart, I should just be giving it all away. But the Lord also calls us to steward that and to provide for our families. And so I'm so thankful that you give us this living, breathing example of someone whose heart is just pouring out Jesus. You are 100% sold out and dedicated to what He's called you to do. And you are wise about it. And you're building something that's sustainable. Because if it's not financially sustainable, you're not going to be able to continue to do it. And that's one way that people's messages die, because they're pouring money into this project and they don't have the financial foundation to be able to make it work. So I absolutely love how you've given us this example of how self-publishing and traditional publishing can form a partnership that really enables your ministry to thrive and your message to get out to the world. So I'm inspired. Yay!
Well, thank you for letting me share, Mindy. And it really is the Lord's goodness, because I have not always been wise about my writing, and there have been times that I have stepped off the path that the Lord had for me. That, I think some of us suffer from shiny object syndrome, and there's the next big thing. And multiple times over the past few years, I'm like, okay, Lord, this is great, but I kind of want to pursue this. And so I'll start heading in that direction. And it's like the Spirit of the Lord is like reining me in, saying, don't go that way. I'm like, but Lord, this is where it's supposed to be. This is where all the experts say I should be headed. This is what looks better. And the Lord is saying, this is the way, walk in it. And when we humble ourselves before Him, and when we obey, even if it doesn't make sense in our understanding, we surround ourselves with godly men and women who can speak wisdom and truth over us and help us see when we've gone the wrong way. And the Lord blesses that obedience. And honestly, Mindy, even if it were just one or two or a handful of people that would read, yes, it would be worth the work, right? But it would be different.
Yeah.
Important, again, the parable of the master and the steward of the talents. We need to be wise where we invest our time, and if it's helping to support, if it's bringing about results in the kingdom of God, but also if it's supporting our family. If I'm going to take time away from my kids and my husband to write, I need to be bringing something back into the family. It's just a wise principle. So that's another message for another time. But I am so glad that I was able to join you here and encourage women. And I believe the Lord is raising up a generation of women and men who seek Him, who yearn for Him, and who long for His return, and are ready to go out and speak the truth to the nations. And what better time, Mindy, than now? We have the internet. We have self-publishing. We have so much now that we're able to reach the ends of the earth from here, like my house in Ohio, right? It is an incredible time to be doing the work of the Lord. So I just want to encourage, our viewers to keep it up and pursue him, and he will make your path straight.
Amen. The truth has been spoken. Bless you, Asheritah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Mindy. Bye.